So everyone is.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome everyone to the School of Vedic Studies session with His Holiness Atmanivedana Swami Maharaj, who's joining us from the Bhaktivedanta Manor in the UK. We are very honored, privileged, and our great fortune to have him again with us. And today he's going to take us through the Bali Mahārāja, the session on the Bali Mahārāja as a Mahajan. So without much ado, I hand over the mic to His Holiness Atmanivedana Swami Maharaj. Hare Krishna. And Maharaj, just one sec, we'll make arrangements so that you can have the, here it is. Yes, Maharaj, you can share now.
Okay, thank you very much.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Swarupdhamana Swami Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvasesa Sunyavadi Pakshata Desatarine Vanchakal Patrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyacha Patitanam Paunibhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasati Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we are doing now the series of Mahajan. We are on the 10th one, which is Bali Mahārāja. So this is the 10th Mahajan we will be discussing. So this is Prahlāda Mahārāja. After killing Hiranyakashipu, he was put on the throne of his kingdom. And you can see in this slide, Lord Brahma himself, none other than him, is crowning him as the emperor of the universe. Then, of course, later on, he had his son, Virochana, the son of Prahlāda. There is not much we can discuss about because I couldn't find so much material on him. But what we are interested in is his son, is Bali Mahārāja. And Bali Mahārāja was sitting on a golden throne, and he took over as the emperor from his father. And of course, his father took it over from Prahlāda Mahārāja. So this is Bali Mahārāja, and we will now discuss how Bali Mahārāja was very learned and very devotional, obviously being a grandson of a great Mahajan himself, Sri Prahlāda Mahārāja, and a pure devotee. So in the Bhagavatam, said, Śukadeva Gosvāmī said, "O king, when Bali Mahārāja lost all his opulences and died in the fight, Sukracharya, the descendant of Bhrigu Muni, brought him back to life. Because of this, the great soul Bali Mahārāja became disciple of Sukracharya and began to serve him with great faith, offering him everything he had." So we would have to understand the Bali Mahārāja who took over the kingdom, and as usual, there is always battle between the demigods and the asuras. And in one of these battles, Bali Mahārāja was unfortunately a victim, and he was killed in that battle. But by the powers of the sages, the demigod sages, they have some kind of special powers, you can say, during those Satya-yogas, where they brought him back to life, and he continued. And as Śukadeva Gosvāmī says, that he was serving Sukracharya with faith and devotion. So he became indebted to Sukracharya for bringing him back to life. And indeed, he had great respect and regard for Sukracharya. Of course, Srila Prabhupada explains that Sukracharya is a guru, a Brahmana, but he is coming in a seminal line. He's not coming in a guru-disciple line of disciples who are surrender to the spiritual master, and then when their spiritual master departs, they take up a position of the guru. Here is that his father was a guru and he became a guru. The Brahmana descendants of Bhrigu Muni were very pleased with Bali Maharaj, who desired to conquer the kingdom of Indra. Therefore, after purifying him and properly bathing him according to the regulative principles, they engaged him in performing a yajna known as Viswajit. Of course, Vishwa means the whole universe and Jit means victory. So they performed this yajna under the guidance of the Brahmanas led by Bhrigu Muni. When ghee, purified butter, was offered in the fire of sacrifice, there appeared from the fire a celestial chariot covered with gold and silk. There also appeared yellow horses like those of Indra and a flag marked with a lion. So these are all the things which were coming out from the yajna and offered to Bali Maharaj. A gilded bow, 2 quivers of infallible arrows, and a celestial armor also appeared. Bali Maharaj's grandfather, Prahlāda Mahārāja, offered Bali a garland of flowers that would never fade, and Shukracharya gave him a conch shell. All these wonderful things came, and we can see in this slide that Bali Maharaj was endowed with all these opulences, blessings of his grandfather, Prahlāda Mahārāja, and Shukracharya giving him the transcendental conch shell. So this conch shell is not an ordinary conch shell. These are very, very particular conch shells with personality by themselves. As we know from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has his conch shell, Arjuna has his conch shell. They have names and their personalities. When Bali Maharaj had thus performed the special ritualistic ceremony advised by the Brahmanas and had received by their grace the equipment for fighting, he circumambulated the Brahmanas and offered them obeisances. He also saluted Prahlāda Mahārāja and offered obeisances to him. Thereafter, getting on the chariot given by Shukracharya, Bali Maharaj, decorated with a nice garland, put protective armors on his body, equipped himself with the bow, and took up the sword and the quivers of arrows. When he sat down on the seat of the chariot, his arms decorated with golden bangles and his ears with sapphire earrings, he shone like the worshipable fire. In this majestic dress, he looked very, very opulent and worthy of a great personality. So when he assembled with his own soldiers and the demon chiefs who were equal to him in strength, opulence, and beauty, they appeared as if they would swallow the sky and burn all directions with their vision. After thus gathering the demoniac soldiers, Bali Maharaj departed for the opulent capital of Indra. Indeed, he seemed to make the entire surface of the world tremble. So can you imagine this huge army, and they're going towards Indraloka to take over Indraloka and control the whole 3 worlds. King Indra's city was full of pleasing orchards and gardens, such as the Nandan gardens. Because of the weight of the flowers, leaves, and fruits, the branches of the eternally existing trees were bending down. The gardens were visited by pairs of chirping birds and singing bees. The entire atmosphere was celestial. This is a description given in the Bhagavatam about Lord Indra's city. Beautiful women protected by demigods spotted in the gardens, which had lotus ponds full of swans, cranes, chakravakas, and ducks. The city was surrounded by trenches full of Ganges water, known as Akash Ganga, and by the high wall, which was the color of fire. Upon this wall were parapets for fighting. So I just made a note here that for more information about the opulence of Indra's kingdom, you have to read the rest of the chapter, which will give you more insight, because we have lack of time, so I could not put the whole thing there. No one who was sinful, envious, violent towards other living entities, cunning, falsely proud, lusty, or greedy could enter that city. Now, these are the qualities of the people. That no one who had any bad qualities, and is mentioned here very clearly, sinful, envious, violent towards other living entities, cunning, forcefully proud, lusty, or greedy, could not enter the city. The people who lived there were all devoid of these faults. Bali Maharaj, who was the commander of the numberless soldiers, gathered his soldiers outside this abode of Indra and attacked it from all directions. He sounded the conch shell given him by his spiritual master Sukracharya, thus creating a fearful situation for the women protected by Indra. Seeing Bali Maharaj's indefatigable endeavor and understanding his motive, King Indra, along with the other demigods, approached his spiritual master Brihaspati and spoke as follows: "My lord, our old enemy Bali Maharaj now has new enthusiasm, and he has obtained such astonishing power that we think that perhaps we cannot resist his powers. No one anywhere can counteract this military arrangement of Bali's. It now appears that Bali is trying to drink up the entire universe with his mouth, lick up the 10 directions with his tongue, and raise fire in every direction with his eyes. Indeed, he has risen like an annihilating fire known as Samvartaka. Kindly inform me, what is the cause of Bali Maharaja's strength, endeavor, influence, and victory? How has he become so enthusiastic?" Brihaspati, the spiritual master of demigods, said, "O Indra, I know the cause of your enemies becoming so powerful. The Brahmana descendants of Bhrigu Muni, being pleased by Bali Maharaj, their disciple, endowed him with such extraordinary power." Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the demigods, informed Indra, "Ordinarily, Bali and his forces could not achieve such strength, but it appears that the Brahmana descendants of Bhrigu Muni, being pleased with Bali Maharaj, endowed them with this spiritual power." In other words, Brihaspati informed Indra that Bali Maharaj's prowess was not his own, but that of his exalted guru, Sukracharya. We sing in our daily prayers, "Yasya prasade bhagavat prasade yasya prasadana kutopi." By the pleasure of the spiritual master, one can get extraordinary power, especially in spiritual advancement. The blessings of the spiritual master are more powerful than one's personal endeavor for such advancement. Narottam Das Thakur says, "Guru mukha padma vakya chite karya akya arana karya mane asya." These are the prayers we sing, the Guru Astikam prayers, Guru Vandana prayers, which glorifies the spiritual master. And by the potency of these prayers, by pleasing the spiritual master, you get these special powers. So here he's saying, especially for spiritual advancement, one should carry out the bona fide order of a spiritual master. By the parampara system, one can thus be endowed with the original spiritual power coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ivam parampara praptam rajasyo vidhu. This is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, waiting until the situation of your enemies is reversed, you should all leave this heavenly planet and go elsewhere where you'll not be seen. So, of course, Brihaspati now is kind of instructing Indra and the residents that you better leave because there is no way you can be protected in this situation. So go away until the situation changes, then you can come back. So Bali Maharaj has now become extremely powerful because of the benediction given him by the Brahmanas. But when he later insults the Brahmanas, he will be vanquished along with his friends and assistants. It's very interesting that the same Brahmanas who gave him empowerment, if you offend them, then the powers will be very quickly taken away from you. So sometimes it is said that when you are given tremendous powers, you become so much arrogant that you lose your sense of reality and you become offensive. And in that offensive mindset, you will offend the person who is the cause of your powers. So we have to be very careful that we do not offend anybody. This is one of the most important principles taught to us in our practice of Krishna consciousness. So Bali Maharaj and Indra were enemies. Therefore, when Brihaspati, the spiritual master of demigods, predicted that Bali Maharaj would be vanquished when he insulted the Brahmanas, by whose grace he had become so powerful, Bali Maharaj's enemies were naturally anxious to know when that opportune moment would come. To pacify King Indra, Brihaspati assured him that the time would certainly come, for Brihaspati could see that in the future. So we know all these great saintly persons, they're called Trikalagya. They can understand the past, the present, and also see into the future. So Bali Maharaj would defy the orders of Shukracharya in order to pacify Lord Vishnu, Vamanadev. Of course, to advance in Krishna consciousness, one can take all risk. To please Vamanadev, Bali Maharaj risked defying the orders of his spiritual master Shukracharya. Because of this, he would lose all his property. Yet, because of devotional service to the Lord, he would get more than he expected. In the future, in the 8th Manavantra, he would occupy the throne of Indra again. So here, Prabhupada is mentioning that if you have to sacrifice or disobey even the spiritual master in order to please the Supreme Lord, then that is approved, because the Supreme Lord is placed higher than the orders of the spiritual master, which takes you away from the Supreme Lord. So of course, if the spiritual master is properly situated in Krishna consciousness, he would never give any direction or instructions to his disciples that will lead them away from the basic principles of surrendering to the Supreme Lord. Śukadeva Gosvāmī continued, the demigods, being thus advised by Brihaspati for their benefit, immediately accepted his words, assuming forms according to their desires. They left the heavenly kingdom and scattered without being observed by the demons. So of course, they also the demigods have special powers. They kind of took up different bodily features, so they could not be recognized until the appropriate time comes. The word karma rupina indicates that the demigods, the inhabitants of heavenly planets, can assume any form they desire. Thus, it was not at all difficult for them to remain incognito before the eyes of the demons. When the demigods had disappeared, Bali Maharaj, the son of Virochana, entered the heavenly kingdom, and from there he brought the 3 worlds under his control. The Brahmana descendant of Bhrigu, being very pleased with their disciples who had conquered the entire universe, now engaged him in performing 100 Aswamedha sacrifice. So the Brahmanas are now engaging Bali Maharaj to perform Aswamedha yagyas, and we know from Bhagavatam and then Mahabharata that Aswamedha yagyas are performed even in Ramayana to establish your rule over everybody else. And those who do not submit to you, then obviously you have to fight them, to subdue them so that they can become subservient to you. We have seen in the dispute between Maharaj Prithu, Indra that when Maharaj Prithu wanted to perform 100 Aswamedha yagyas, Indra wanted to impede him, because of such sacrifices that Indra was made king of heaven. So of course, when Indra also was performing so many sacrifices, Aswamedha, and he qualified himself to take up that position. So here it is said that Indra was a bit concerned that if someone else performs those yagyas, then naturally there will be a challenge to him, and therefore he was impeding them. So here the Brahmana descendants of Bhrigu decided that although Maharaj Bali was situated on the throne of Indra, he would not be able to stay there unless he performs such sacrifices. Therefore, they advised Bali Maharaj to perform at least as many Aswamedha Yagyas as Indra. The word Ayajanayan indicates that all the Brahmanas induced Bali Maharaj to perform such sacrifice. Because of the favor of the Brahmanas, the great soul Bali Maharaj, thinking himself very satisfied, became very opulent and prosperous and began to enjoy his kingdom. So of course, we all know that when we are endowed with unlimited opulences, we kind of lose our way and so much absorbed in enjoying that we lose sight of our original goal. The Brahmanas are called Divya, Dvija Deva, and Satriyas are called Nara Devas. The word Deva actually refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Brahmanas guide human society in becoming happy by satisfying Lord Vishnu. And according to their advice, the Satriyas, who are called Naradeva, keep law and order so that other people, namely the Vaishyas and the Sudras, may properly follow regulative principles. In this way, people are gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, being very pleased by the Prayavrata ceremony performed by Aditi, appeared before her in a full opulence at her request. The Lord agreed to become her son. So now we are going to change tracks here. Bali Maharaj has conquered the heavenly planets and he is so absorbed in enjoying all that. Meanwhile, in a different situation, Aditi, the wife of Kashyapa, is performing a special ceremony called Prayavrata ceremony to become a child just as good as God. Now, of course, you cannot get anyone who is as good as God because you cannot be as good as God. Only God, as Prabhupada mentioned, is the supreme and he has no second. And therefore, Aditi performed this at a request. The Lord agreed to become her son. So by performing this ceremony, the Lord appeared before her in a full opulence. And Aditi was so much pleased by this that the Lord appeared and she requested the Lord to then become her son. So Śukadeva Gosvāmī said, "O king, after Aditi was thus advised by the husband Kashyap Muni, she strictly followed his instructions without laziness and in this way performed the Prayavrata ritualistic ceremony." Prabhupada says in the purport, "For the advancement in anything, especially in spiritual life, one must strictly follow the bona fide instructions of a spiritual of a teacher. Aditi did this. She strictly followed the instructions of her husband and guru, as confirmed in the Vedic injunctions. Yasya deva para bhakti, yes, tatha deve tatha gurun. One should have complete faith in the guru, who helps the disciple make progress in spiritual life. As soon as the disciple thinks independently, not caring for the instructions of the spiritual master, he is a failure. Yasya prasadana kati kutopi. Aditi very strictly followed the instructions of her husband, the spiritual master, and thus was successful. So again, Prabhupada is emphasizing here that it is utmost important for one who has been awakened spiritually, has accepted the spiritual master, then accept the spiritual master's order as one's life and soul. That way you will achieve complete perfection and make advancement. My dear king, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, dressed in yellow garments and bearing a conch shell, disc, club, and lotus in his 4 hands, then appeared before Aditi. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead became visible to Aditi's eyes, Aditi was so overwhelmed by the transcendental bliss that she at once stood up and then fell to the ground like a rod to offer the Lord her respectful obeisances. Aditi stood silently with folded hands, unable to offer prayers to the Lord because of transcendental bliss. Tears filled her eyes and the hairs on her body stood on end because she could see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. She felt ecstasy and her body trembled. O mother of demigods, in my opinion, almost all the chiefs of the demons are now unconquerable, for they are being protected by Brahmanas, whom the Supreme Lord always favors. Thus, the use of power against them now will not be at all the source of happiness. When a person is favored by a Brahmana and a Vaishnava, no one can defeat him. Even the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not interfere when one is protected by the Brahmanas. It is said, Go Brahmana Hitayacha. The Lord's first inclination is to give all benediction to the cows and the Brahmanas. Therefore, if a Brahmanas favors someone, the Lord does not interfere, nor can anyone interfere with the happiness of such a person. Yet, because I have been satisfied by the activities of your vow, O Goddess Aditi, I must find some means to favor you. For worship of me never goes in vain, but certainly gives the desired result according to what one deserves. So here, of course, there's a conversation going on between Aditi and the Supreme Lord. He's saying that if the Brahmanas have blessed someone with power, then even the Lord is helpless in this situation because he won't interfere. But here then the Lord is saying, I will have to find another way to overcome and bypass this. Of course, the Lord is, as we know, transcendentally situated. He can overcome any situation. There is nothing that can prevent him from overcoming any obstacles or any vows or any promises. So here in the verse is saying that certainly gives desired results according to what one deserves. So the Lord is going to fulfill the desires of Aditi. You have prayed to me and properly worshipped me by performing the great Prayavrata ceremony. For the sake of protecting your sons, because of Kashyapa Muni's austerities, I shall agree to become your son and thus protect your other sons. Of course, Aditi is also the transcendental mother of all the demigods. The Lord appeared in his original form with ornaments and weapons in his hand. Although this ever-existing form is not visible in the material world, he nonetheless appears in this form. Then, in the presence of his father and mother, he assumes the form of Vamana, the Brahmana dwarf, and Brahmachari, just like a theatrical actor. So, in this slide, we can see how Vamanadev took up the form of a young dwarf in front of Kashyapa Muni and Aditi to please them as their son. When the great sages saw the Lord as the Brahmachari dwarf Vamana, they were certainly very pleased. Thus they placed before them Kashyapa Muni. Thus they placed before them Kashyapa Muni, the Prajapati, and performed all the ritualistic ceremonies such as the birthday ceremony. So all of them were very pleased and they're performing all kinds of offerings to Vamanadev. According to a Vedic civilization, when a child is born in the family of a Brahmana, the birthday ceremony known as Jata Karma is first performed, and then other ceremonies are gradually performed. But when this Vamana Rupa appeared in the form of a Vatu or a Brahmachari, the sacred thread ceremony was also performed immediately. Now, generally it is said that when the child is born, there's an Namkaran ceremony, and after that, when the child reaches at a certain age, which is like approaching his teen years, then he is given the Brahmana thread, and then he is allowed to perform all the duties of a Brahmana. In this case, the Lord appeared as a young Brahmachari, and therefore the sacred thread ceremony was performed at the same time. When the Lord heard that Bali Mahārāja was performing Ashwamedha sacrifices under the patronage of Brahmanas belonging to the Bhrigu dynasty, the Supreme Lord, who is full in every respect, proceeded there to show his mercy to Bali Mahārāja. By his weight, he pushed down the earth with every step. So now Vamanadev is going to trick Bali Mahārāja, and in this case, as we understood earlier on, that Bali Mahārāja will now become an offensive towards the Brahmanas who get empowerment. While engaged in performing the sacrifice in the field known as Bhrigu Kacha on the northern bank of the Narmada river, the Brahmanical priest, the descendants of Bhrigu, saw Vamanadev to be like the sun rising nearby. O king, because of Vamanadev's bright effulgence, the priest, along with Bali Mahārāja and all the members of the assembly, were robed in their splendor. Thus they began to ask one another whether the sun god himself, Sanat Kumar, or the fire god had personally come to see the sacrificial ceremony. While the priests of the Bhrigu dynasty and their disciples talked and argued in various ways, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vamanadev, holding in his hand a rod, the umbrella, and a water pot full of water, entered the arena of the Ashwamedha sacrifice. Appearing as a Brahmana boy wearing a belt of straw, the sacred thread, an upper garment of deer skin, and matted locks of his hair, Lord Vamanadev entered the arena of sacrifice. His brilliant effulgence diminished the brilliance of all the priests and their disciples, who thus stood from their seats and welcomed the Lord properly by offering obeisances. Bali Mahārāja, jubilant to see Lord Vamanadev, whose beautiful limbs contributed equally to the beauty of his entire body, offered him a seat with great satisfaction, thus offering a proper reception to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is always beautiful to liberated souls. Bali Mahārāja worshipped him by washing his feet. So Bali Mahārāja is performing that ritual of welcoming great personalities and bathing their feet with water. And of course, Sukacharya is a little bit in tension here that he will lose control of Bali Mahārāja. Lord Śiva, the best of demigods, who carries on his forehead the emblem of moon, received on his head with great devotion the Ganges water emanating from the toe of Vishnu. Being aware of religious principles, Bali Mahārāja knew this. Consequently, following in the footsteps of Lord Śiva, he also placed on his head the water that had washed the lotus feet, the Lord's lotus feet. Bali Mahārāja then said to Lord Vamanadev, O Brahmana, I offer you my hearty welcome and my respectful obeisances. Please let us know what we may do for you. We think of you as a personified austerity of a great Brahmana sage. At this stage, of course, Bali Mahārāja doesn't know that this is the Supreme Lord. And he's saying, here's a Brahmana, and it's a custom of saintly persons, especially those who are devotees or realized persons in spiritual knowledge, to offer Brahmana some dakshina. So, O son of Brahmana, it appears that you have come here to ask me for something. Therefore, whatever you want, you may ask, you may take from me. O best of those who are worshipable, you may take from me a cow, gold, furnished house, palatable food and drink, the daughter of a Brahmana for your wife, prosperous villages, horses, elephants, chariots, or whatever you desire. Of course, Bali Mahārāja now is in control of the three worlds. He's saying, I can offer anything you want. Ask what you want and I will give it to you. So in his arrogance, he's thinking he can give the Lord what he wants. But the Lord always says, as we know from Bhagavad Gita, Sarva dharmam parijata ma'amekam sarvaja aham tam sarva papiva ma'amekam sarvaja. Take full shelter of me, fully surrender to me. This is what the Lord wants. He doesn't desire anything. So here, of course, Bali Mahārāja is under little illusion. So Śukadeva Gosvāmī continued. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vamanadev, heard Bali Mahārāja speaking in this pleasing way, he was very satisfied. Bali Mahārāja had spoken in terms of religious principles. Thus the Lord began to praise him. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O King, you are indeed exalted because your present advisors are Brahmanas who are descendants of Bhrigu, and because of your instructor for your future life is your grandfather, the peaceful and venerable Prahlāda Mahārāja. The statements are very true and they completely agree with religious etiquette. They are in keeping with the behavior of your family and they enhance your reputation. Of course, not only Bali Maharaj was guided by the great Brahmanas and follow, descendants of Bhrigu Muni, at the same time, he was under the care and guidance of his great exalted grandfather, Prahlāda Mahārāja. So he was very well endowed with the religious principles. Prahlāda Mahārāja is a vivid example of a pure devotee. Someone might argue that since Prahlāda Mahārāja, even though very old, was attached to his family and specifically to his grandson Bali Mahārāja, how could he be an ideal example? Therefore, the verse uses the word prashanta. A devotee is always sober. He is never disturbed by any condition. Even if a devotee remains in grihastha life, he does not renounce material possessions. He should still be understood to be prashanta, sober, because of his pure devotion to the Lord. So, of course, we may look at it from a material point of view that Prahlāda Mahārāja is attached to his grandson. But Prahlāda Mahārāja is totally detached and he's very sober. He understands the principle of utilizing everything in the service of the Lord. And therefore, as a responsible person, he's guiding his grandson in the righteous path. So we know this verse from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Kiba Vipra Kiba Nyasi Sudra Kenenaya. Ye Krishna Tattvavate Se Guru Khaya. Whether one is a Brahmana, a sannyasi, or a Sudra, regardless of what he is, he can become a spiritual master if he knows the signs of Krishna. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 8, text 128. Anyone completely aware of the signs of Krishna, regardless of his status in life, is a guru. Thus Prahlāda Mahārāja is a guru in all circumstances. His lordship, Vamandev, also teaches sannyasi and brahmacharis that one should not ask more than necessary. He wanted only 3 paces of land, although Bali Mahārāja wanted to give him anything he wanted. So this is what Prabhupada is saying in the purport, that by the example of the Lord himself as Vamanadev, as a renunciate, he's saying that a brahmachari or a sannyasi should not accumulate more than what is required for his necessity, even though he may be offered. So if he's offered so many things, then he should also renounce these things very easily and be detached. In this, one very nice pastime of Srila Prabhupada comes to my mind. One time Prabhupada was given a Rolex watch, and he already had a Rolex watch with him. So one disciple came with, great anticipation that he's going to offer his spiritual master a Rolex watch. So Prabhupada very gracefully accepted the Rolex watch and he put it on his hand. So now he had 2 Rolex watches. And someone had seen this picture of Prabhupada and made a comment that here is such an exalted renunciate and he's wearing 2 Rolex watches. What kind of example is setting? But then he did not see the picture after that picture was taken. Immediately after he accepted the gift from his disciple, to please the disciple that the spiritual master has accepted his gift, and now he's been blessed by his spiritual master, in this case Srila Prabhupada. Then Srila Prabhupada took up one of the Rolex watches and gave it away to one of the devotees who was sitting there in the audience with Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was totally detached. Was not thinking, oh, let me keep this and I will wear one watch one day and next another day I will wear the other watch. No, he accepted it as a gift from his disciple, and then later on he gave it as a gift to someone else. This is the principle of renunciation and not being attached. So, O King Bali, never in your dynasty has the low-minded king been born, who upon being requested has refused charity to Brahmanas in a holy place or a fight to a Kshatriya on a battlefield. And your dynasty is even more glorious due to the presence of Prahlāda Mahārāja, who is like a beautiful moon in the sky. So of course here, Śukadeva Gosvāmī is mentioning to Bali Mahārāja that no one in your dynasty has so far been born who is miserly and has not given charity to Brahmanas. So we know the father of Prahlāda Mahārāja, Hiranyakashipu, although he is considered a great asura and demoniac person, but whenever the Brahmanas were there, he would always give generously to Brahmanas in charity. So even though he's a demoniac person, but he would still follow the principle of Dharma, and therefore he would give charity to Brahmanas. Your father, Virochana, the son of Maharaj Prahlāda, was very affectionate towards Brahmanas, although he knew very well that it was the demigods who had come to him in the dress of Brahmanas. At their request, he delivered them the duration of his life. So even though he knew that these are demigods who have come in disguise, he was still very generously giving to the Brahmanas, because he wasn't giving to the people who are dressed as Brahmanas, but to the principle of Brahmana. You also have observed the principle followed by great personalities who are household Brahmanas, by your forefathers and great heroes who are extremely famous for their exalted activities. O King of deities, from your majesty, you come from such a noble family, and you are able to give charity munificently. I ask only 3 paces of land to the measurement of my steps. O King, control of the entire universe, although you are very munificent and are able to give me as much land as I want, I do not want anything from you that is unnecessary. A learned Brahmana takes charity from others only according to his needs. He does not become entangled in sinful activities. Bali Mahārāja said, O son of a Brahmana, your instructions are as good as those of a learned and elderly person. Nonetheless, you are a boy and your intelligence is insufficient. Thus, you are not very prudent in regard to your requests. Of course, Bali Mahārāja is thinking, here is a young boy. He doesn't know the ways of life, and therefore he's only asking for 3 steps of land. But he could ask whatever he wants. The personal Godhead said, O my dear king, even the entirety of whatever there may be within the 3 worlds to satisfy one's senses, cannot satisfy a person whose senses are uncontrolled. This is a very important point, that everything in the whole universe, every aspect of opulence is not enough to satisfy one whose senses are uncontrolled. Bali Mahārāja, under the illusion thinking he owns the 3 worlds, and therefore he can give whatever young Brahmana boy wants. In fact, Bali Mahārāja offered the entire planet, but the Lord only asks for 3 steps of land. Therefore, O king, from you, the best of those who give charity, I ask only 3 paces of land. By such a gift, I shall be very pleased, for the way of happiness is to be fully satisfied, to receive that which is absolutely needed. Śukadeva Gosvāmī continued. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead thus spoke to Bali Mahārāja, Bali smiled and told him, all right, take whatever you like. To confirm this, he promised to give Vamanadev the desired land. He then took up his water pot. Understanding Lord Vishnu's purpose, Sukracharya, the best of the learned, immediately spoke as follows to his disciple, who was about to offer everything to Lord Vamanadev. Sukracharya said, O son of Virochana, this brahmachari is in the form of a dwarf, is directly the imperishable Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. Accepting Kasyapa Muni as his father and Aditi as his mother, he has now appeared in order to fulfill the interest of the demigods. So, Sukracharya is trying to convince Bali Mahārāja, do not go ahead with this promise. And of course, in the previous verse, we understand that Bali Mahārāja took up his water pot, and generally a Brahmana takes water from his water pot, puts it in his right hand as a mark of promise that I now make a promise and I'll fulfill this promise. But here Sukracharya is trying to convince Bali Mahārāja, don't do this, you will lose everything. You do not know what dangerous position you have accepted by promising to give him land. I do not think that that this promise is good for you. It will bring great harm to the demons. This person falsely appearing as a brahmachari is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who has come in the form to take away all your land, wealth, beauty, power, fame, and education. After taking everything from you, he will deliver it to Indra, your enemy. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains in this regard that the word Hari means one who takes away. If one connects himself with Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord takes away all his miseries. And in the beginning, the Lord also specifically appears to take away all his material possessions, reputations, education, and beauty. You have promised to give him 3 steps of land in charity, but when you give it, he will occupy the 3 worlds. You are a rascal. You do not know what a great mistake you have made. After giving everything to Lord Vishnu, you will have no means of livelihood. How then shall you live? So now, Sukracharya is getting angry and he's saying that you will give, everything will be gone away. How will you exist? So Vamanadev will first occupy the 3 worlds with 1 step. Then he will take his 2nd step and occupy everything in outer space. And then he will expand his universal body to occupy everything. Where will you offer him the 3rd step? You will certainly be unable to fulfill your promise. And I think that because of this inability, your eternal residence will be in hell. Therefore, one who is in full knowledge should divide his accumulated wealth in 5 parts: for religion, for reputation, for opulence, for sense gratification, and for the maintenance of his family members. Such a person is happy in this world and in the next. So here, Śukadeva Gosvāmī is explaining that everyone who is successful in this material world must divide his wealth in 5 portions. 1 portion should be exclusively for religious purpose, 1 for his reputation, 1 for opulence, 1 for sense gratification, and rest for the maintenance of family members. The Shastra enjoins that if one has money, one should divide all that he has accumulated into 5 divisions. This is what Prabhupada is further explaining in the purport. 1 part for religion, 1 part for reputation, 1 part for opulence, 1 part for sense gratification, and 1 part to maintain the members of the family. At the present, however, because people are bereft of all knowledge, they spend all their money for the satisfaction of their family. Srila Rupa Goswami taught us by his own example, by using 50% of his accumulated wealth for Krishna, 25% of his own for his own self, and 25% for the members of his family. One's main purpose should be to advance in Krishna consciousness. This is included in dharma, artha, and kama. However, because one's family members expect some profit, one should also satisfy them by giving them a portion of one's accumulated wealth. This is the Shastric injunction. So here Rupa Goswami is giving an example by his own person, how we should do in our lives. Of course, sometimes it is very difficult to follow in the footsteps of Rupa Goswami, but nonetheless, if you have high insight in the scriptural injunctions and faith in and trust of Brahmanas, great saintly persons, then the formula given is one that will bring you happiness and not distress. Sri Śukadeva Gosvāmī said, O King Parikshit, when Bali Mahārāja was thus advised by his spiritual master Sukracharya, his family priest, he remained silent for some time, and then after full deliberation, he replied to his spiritual master as follows. Bali Mahārāja said, as you have already stated, the principle of religion that does not hinder one's economic development, sense gratification, fame, and means of livelihood is the real occupational duty of a householder. I also think that this religious principle is correct. A devotee is determined to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead to his full satisfaction, Anything that hampers such a determination should certainly be rejected. This is the principle of bhakti. Anukula yasya sankalpa, pratikula yasya vrajanam. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Lila, chapter 22, text 100. This is mentioned by Rupa Goswami also. To perform devotional service, one must accept only that which is favorable and reject that which is unfavorable. So we are very familiar with this. It is very easy to speak, but unfortunately, when it comes to reality, to practice is somewhat difficult unless until you have full realization of the Supreme Lord and have faith in him, that he is the Supreme Controller and he will definitely protect you. Bali Maharaj had the opportunity to contribute everything he possessed to the lotus feet of the Lord Vamana, but Sukracharya was putting forward a material argument to hamper this process of devotional service. Under the circumstances, Bali Maharaj decided that such hindrances should certainly be avoided. In other words, he decided immediately to reject the advice of Sukracharya and go on with his duty. Thus, he gave all his possession to Lord Vamana. I am the grandson of Maharaj Prahlāda. How can I withdraw my promise because of greed for money when I have already said that I shall give this land? How can I behave like an ordinary cheater, especially towards a Brahmana? Bali Maharaj had already been blessed by his grandfather Prahlāda Mahārāja. Therefore, he was a pure devotee. Although born in a family of demons, there are two kinds of highly elevated devotees called Sadhana Siddha and Kripa Siddha. Sadhana Siddha refers to one who has become a devotee by regular execution of regulative principles mentioned in the Shastras as ordered and directed by the spiritual master. Kripa Siddhi refers to those other devotees who may not have undergone all the required details of devotional service, but who, by the special mercy of Guru and Krishna, the spiritual master and the Supreme Personal of Godhead, have immediately attained the perfection of devotional service. So in my humble opinion, we can never become sadhana bhaktas. Therefore, we have to pray for the mercy of Krishna and Guru, that we become Kripa Siddhas and receive this transcendental mercy of the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. Bali Maharaj became Kripa Siddha because of special mercy both Guru and Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms this favor. Guru Krishna Prasade Paye Bhakti Latta Bij. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 19, text 151. Bali Maharaj, by the grace of Prahlāda Mahārāja, put the seed of devotional service, and when that seed developed, he achieved ultimate fruit of that service, namely love of Godhead. Prema Puma Artha Mohan. Immediately upon the appearance of Lord Vamana, the ultimate Supreme Personality of Godhead, the unlimited Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had assumed the form of Vamana, then began increasing in his size, acting in terms of material energy, until everything in the universe was within his body, including the earth, the planetary systems, the sky, the directions, and various holes in the universe, the seas, the oceans, the birds, beasts, human beings, the demigods, and the great saintly persons. Vamana expanded and took over everything, and slowly he was encompassing everything Bali Maharaj had. As the Lord took his second step, he covered the heavenly planets, and not even a spot remained for the third step. For the Lord's foot extended higher and higher beyond Maharoka, Jnanaloka, Apoloka, and even Satyaloka. Bali Maharaj now was arrested by Vamana. So Bali Maharaj, arrested by the Lord, this chapter describes how Lord Vishnu, desiring to advertise the glories of Bali Maharaj, arrested him for not fulfilling his promise in regards to the Lord's third step. So Bali Maharaj is now imprisoned here, and Vamana is sitting on his throne and asking that you have now not fulfilled your promise. And Prahlāda Mahārāja is there and saying, that how are you going to fulfill the third promise? O king of demons, you have promised to give me 3 steps of land, but I occupied the entire universe with 2 steps. Now think about where I should put my third. Of these possessions, with 1 step, I have occupied Bhurloka, and with my body, I have occupied the entire sky in all directions, and in your presence, with my, with my 2nd step, I have occupied the upper planetary systems. Because you have been unable to give charity in accordance to your promise, the rule is that you should go down and live in the hellish planet. Therefore, in accordance with the order of Sukracharya, your spiritual master, now you go down and live there. Bali Maharaj said, "O best of personality of Godhead, most worshipable for all the demigods, if you think that my promise has become false, I shall certainly rectify matters to make it truthful. I cannot allow my promise to be false. Please, therefore, place your third lotus foot on my head." Bali Maharaj surrenders to Vamandev and he puts his third foot on his head. Although bereft of his riches, fallen from his original position, defeated and arrested by his enemies, revoked and deserted by his relatives and friends, although suffering the pains of being bound, and although rebuffed and cursed by his spiritual master, Bali Maharaj, being fixed in his vow, did not give up his truthfulness. It was certainly with pretension that I spoke about religious principles, and he did not give up religious principle, for he is true to his words. The Lord continued, because of this great tolerance, I have given him a place not obtainable even by demigods. He will become king of the heavenly planets during the period of Manu, known as Savrani. Now here, of course, when Vamandev is taking everything away from Bali Maharaj, he's saying that I have given him a place not obtainable even by demigods. So while he's surrendering in his present existence, he will get something which is not obtainable by demigods. At the same time, when he finishes his period, he'll become the next Indra. Until Bali Maharaj achieves the position of the king of heaven, he shall live on the planet Sutala, which was made by Vishwakarma according to my order. Because it is specially protected by me, it is free from mental and bodily miseries, fatigue, dizziness, defeat, and all other disturbance. Bali Maharaj, you may now go and live there peacefully. Bali Maharaj, Indrasena, now you may go to the planet Sutala, which is desired even by the demigods. Live there peacefully, surrounded by your friends and relatives. All good fortune unto you. O great hero, I shall always be with you and give you protection in all respects, along with your associates and paraphernalia. Moreover, you will always be able to see me there. So this is what you get when you fully surrender to the Supreme Lord. So I will stop now, and thank you all very much for your kind attention. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yeah.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much, Maharaj. So yes, as usual, we will have a few questions. So request the devotees to raise hands. Any question or a comment or a reflection on what we went through with Maharaj today on the session on Bali Maharaj?
Looks like there is no question, so it was a good presentation, I think. Everybody understood how to surrender.
Absolutely correct. We have one question from Anupama Mataji. So yes.
Okay. Haribol, Hare Krishna, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Yes, it was a wonderful presentation, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Maharaj, we generally see that it is always the asuras or the demons that attack the demigods and they try to take over. So my question is that why are they always attacking the demigods, although they have been given their own residence? And do the demigods also transgress in a similar manner the limits of what has been allotted by the Lord to take over the kingdom of the demons, let's say? Hare Krishna.
You see, according to the norms of civility, if you live within your means and within your what has been granted, as Prabhupada says, you should be satisfied with what Krishna has given to you, then you'll be happily situated. But if you want more than what you are given, thinking that more will make you more happier and more satisfied, then it won't be successful in making you happy by getting more. So the asuras, even though they have been given plentiful for their own use and their lifestyle, they are never happy. And this is one of the nature of material world. In the material world, you are never satisfied. With whatever you have, you always want more. Just like, if you are, say, take a mundane example, you're working for a company and your manager comes and says, well, we have made good profit this year, so we are raising everybody's salary by 2%. So he said, oh, well, wow, 2%. It would be better if you get 5% since you have made such a huge profit. So you're not happy, you want more. And then another example I gave you is that you are working hard and you are able to buy a small house and you get a nice house. You're quite happy in a small house. You have a small family, so it's sufficient for your family. But as you're progressing and more opulence come, you become more affluent, you get more money, then you think, oh, I like to move in a bigger house. So from a 2-bedroom house, you buy a 5-bedroom house. Still, that 5-bedroom house is bigger than what you want, but you feel, oh, I have got a bigger house now. You have a small car, you want to buy a bigger car, you want a higher model car. So you are never satisfied. So similarly, in material world, the demigods are like, the asuras are like that. They are never satisfied. They are always greedy. They want more and more and more. And as I mentioned in one of the verses, saying that even if you're given everything in the 3 worlds, if you're not satisfied, then it will never make you happy because you will never be satisfied. You want more. So this is the mentality of the asuras. And the demigods, they do not want to fight. But if the fight is thrown to them, then it is natural that they have to defend their kingdom and the citizens under whom they are giving protection. So it is natural that the demigods, when they are thrown a challenge to fight, they will have to fight. And sometimes demigods win, sometimes the asuras win. In this case, we saw from the beginning that Bali Mahārāja was very forceful and he went to take over the demigods, and in the battle, he was killed. But then the descendants of Bhrigu Muni and Sukracharya, by their Brahmanical potency and power, brought him back to life. And then they did the sacrifices and he got all the opulence. And again, he took over everything. And then finally, the Lord says, okay, this is not very good. I've got to set the balance right. So the Lord comes and then he sets down. So this is a part of material world. You will never be satisfied. Whatever you want. You see in the history, you see that you are president of a kingdom. You are ruling, but you're not happy. You want a bigger. So we know that the likes of Hitler wanted to take over the whole world, and likes of Genghis Khan want to take over the whole world. Then there is many demoniac persons who want to take over the whole world. They're never satisfied with what they have. They want more and more and more. This is the nature of material world. I would say that this is why the asuras act like that. Always wanting more, never satisfied.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Hare Krishna, Maharaj. One more question, if it is okay.
Yes, with me, it's no problem.
Okay. Now, presently, he's residing in the Sutala planet, which is a lower planet. So even from the pages of Bhagavatam, we know that there are planets, where the Nagas live. They're very opulent and they're not scared of anything. They have no old age. So are all these planets which are below the Earth planet, are they all very materially opulent?
Yes. You see, there is you have to look at this way. The Earth or Bhumandal, not just Earth, but the Bhumandal, which are the middle planetary portions, is where what we are experiencing here on the planet Earth. And all the other planets which are in the Bhumandal encompassment are facing the same kind of miseries and happiness. And higher planetary system and the lower planetary system, although we look at it from our point of view that this is higher and this lower, depends on which way you're standing. You see, here in Australia, you think people up there are standing up, and we are standing here thinking people in Australia are upside down, but they're also standing up. It's just your perception of which side you are. But as according to the description, what I've read in the Mahabharata, that in the times of Yudhishthira Maharaj, many people from the lower planetary system would come to visit this planet. And at the same time, people from the higher planetary system, like the demigod planets, would also come and visit here. And because they are coming from these lower planetary systems, they must have, as Prabhupada explains in one purport, I forget exactly which purport it is, but he says that they have far superior opulence and technology than what we have here. And of course, in the last verses where I was presenting Bali Maharaja's presentation, Krishna, Vaman is himself saying that I have ordered Vishwakarma, the universal architect, to make this planet specially for you, where there will be no misery, no sickness, and happiness is there. And above all, I will be there personally with you there. So it is not that it is a hellish planet. It is just our conjunction. You see, as I was preparing for the 12th Mahajan, Yamraja, and we have these pictures or idea that Yamraja is very ferocious and ugly looking. But actually, in my research, I found out that Yamraja is as beautiful as Indra. And he has also got the dark skin hue like Krishna's. And obviously his dutas are equally great, but they have some fear in them because they come with all kinds of weapons and things like when you are going to be snatched out of your body due to our past sinful activities. So we have these ideas which we, matches up with our living understanding. But if we go into the scriptures, it gives us a far greater understanding, and therefore the lower planetary system also have got much more opulence than we think we have here.
So are these low planetary systems spiritually devoid?
That is only lacking in those planets, is that they don't have opportunity for higher understanding. Because as saying that if you become very, very sinful, then you go to a certain, you go to courtyard of Yamraja, where it's mentioned in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and further elaborated in Garuda Purana, what kind of punishment is dispensed to you according to the sinful activities. After that, you are put into the lower planetary system where you can enjoy happiness devoid of the Lord. But it is condemned, eternally condemned there. You don't want to be there. So in the higher planets, Prabhupada explains that at least in the demigod's planetary system, the heavenly planet, there is the concept of approaching the Supreme and worshipping Him. So that is the difference between in my understanding, that you will be devoid of devotional practices and principle of understanding the Supreme Lord. You'll be just caught up in that matrix of a circle, happiness and happiness and happiness, but you will be devoid of that transcendental happiness.
So these lower planetary systems, Maharaj, do they have law of karma?
Yeah, they have everything there also. You see, the only thing is that they are devoid of the Supreme. But the law of karma, as long as you're in the material world, law of karma with the heavenly planets, middle planet system, or lower planet system, it all works. So, you may be, in low planet system, enjoying. You have, there's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, this planet of oceans full of alcohol. You may go to that planet and just drink yourself silly. But the consequence after that is kind of dangerous, So it could be not a pretty place to be, because when you are so much absorbed in sense enjoyment, then also you do the negative things, which will bring you a lot of karma will take place, and then you have to go for suffering, and you will be caught up in that until, of course, you get the causeless mercy of the Lord, and he picks you out and says, okay, you're suffering enough. Let me put you on the right track here, give you opportunity to do devotional service and move forward. And that is why we come to this material world, where we get opportunity to go back to Godhead in the shortest possible time and experience devotional service with bliss.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. So we have Subal Prabhu. Subal Prabhu, please go on, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you so much for the wonderful class, as always. Maharaj, first let me ask for your forgiveness, because my question is a bit weird. Maharaj, this question is about meaning what makes one qualified to be called as Mahajan, because in the whole episode of Bali Mahārāja, we see that the only thing he did was basically fulfilled his promise. And it was a kind of his good fortune that the Brahman who asked for this promise from Bali Mahārāja turned out to be Lord Vishnu. So had it been a normal Brahman also, he would have still fulfilled the promise by doing anything that he could. So it could have been so that, or had it been so that it would have been a normal Brahman, and the normal Brahman, instead of asking for 3 places of land, he could have directly asked for all the 3 worlds. And then Bali Mahārāja would have anyway had to give to fulfill the promise. So that would not mean that Bali Mahārāja becomes a Mahajan because he fulfilled the promise and given everything to that normal Brahman. But just because this Brahman turned out to be Lord Vishnu himself, how could this make Bali Mahārāja a Mahajan? If you can throw some light on it. Sorry for this weird question.
No problem. You have to understand, the Mahajans are great teachers of a lesson to mankind. So Bali Mahārāja, of course, is teaching us many things, as we are, if you paid attention to the whole presentation, that he was a righteous person, he was performing all the necessary religious principles he was following, and he himself was setting an example. Although he's born in an Asuric dynasty, he was influenced by Prahlāda Mahārāja, and Prahlāda Mahārāja, when he became the king, he was bringing devotional principles into his kingdom, and that was carried on in that line. And now, on the other hand, you have to see why Bali Mahārāja is a Mahajan. Is one aspect that he was following all the principles of Dharma perfectly, and he was setting an example. Second, as we know from Prahlāda Mahārāja's teaching, the 9 processes of devotional service, and the last one is Atmanivedana, full surrender completely. So he showed by his own example that he fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord without any reservation. And secondly, the Lord understood that he is not just an ordinary person, he is a great devotee. And therefore, the Lord himself decides to come and be a part of his Leela, you can say, and participate in the transcendental exchange of Leela. Lord doesn't willy-nilly come to any Brahmanas. He only approaches those who are pure devotees, who are fully surrendered in perfection. And therefore, the Lord will indulge in a pastime with that personality, not others. So my understanding is that Bali Mahārāja is called Mahajan because he teaches us by his own personal example how to live an exemplary life, even though you may have everything at your disposal, but use that in the service of the Supreme Lord. And that is the important lesson we have to learn from the Mahajans. Each Mahajan is teaching us a specific depth of understanding spiritual practices. Just like the one we did before was Janaka Mahārāja. Janaka Mahārāja perfected in performance of bhakti yoga, or karma yoga rather. And he performed karma yoga to the perfection, achieved the highest. So there are different means of teaching us the aspects which we can practice in our own lives to reach perfection. So that is why that is my understanding why Bali Mahārāja is one of the great Mahajans.
Maharaj, meaning just to extend that, if you don't mind, because all qualities that were visible of Bali Maharaj, these qualities were applicable to people like Yudhishthir Maharaj also. They also led a life with perfect dharma, having full surrender to the Lord. But despite this, Yudhishthir Maharaj or Vidur, or Vidur is Yamraja only, but Yudhishthir Maharaj specifically, he is not called a Mahajan. But there is a lot to learn from Yudhishthir also. So, meaning what I could not understand is meaning Prahlāda Mahārāja, Bhīṣma and all, we can understand that there is something which is far special than various other people. But in case of Bali Mahārāja, except for the fulfillment of the vow, which he would have anyway done, all the qualities that he had were applicable to various other devotees also. So what makes Bali Mahārāja so special to be called as a Mahajan, whereas people like Yudhishthir are not called Mahajan? Sorry.
Well, as I explained, see, Bali Mahārāja, by his power as, he got from the Brahmanas, he conquered the 3 worlds. Now, the only way he could be defeated was by the Supreme Lord himself, but he cannot directly defeat him because he would violate, the Supreme Lord would violate his own principle of defying the blessings of the Brahmanas. Therefore, he had to tweak that, and that is why he came. As I said, Bali Mahārāja is not an ordinary person. Although he had everything, and then Krishna had to come in form of Vamana to take away everything. Now, in terms of Yudhishthir Maharaj was not the, you can say, the emperor of the whole kingdom. He was only emperor of this planet Earth, Bharatvarsha. And at the same time, Yudhishthir Maharaj, although he was following perfectly the principle of Dharma, because he is also Dharmaraj, some stages he did adharma, which was that knowing very well that this is a trick by Duryodhana and Sakuni, he was enticed into following their entrapment, and he gambled away his kingdom, his brothers, even to the extent his wife. And that is why he is not a Mahajan. Although he's a great personality, but still he should have known that just like Bali Mahārāja, even though his own spiritual master is telling him, don't do this, this is wrong, this person will trick you. So I don't care. I will follow as my bhāgavata-dharma. So Yudhishthir Maharaj could have very easily said to Duryodhana, I'm not having any of this nonsense. I'm not going to gamble with you. And the battle of Kurukshetra would not have taken place. But it was enticed. And then, of course, in a higher hindsight, you can say that it was maybe a supreme plan of the Lord to entice him to play a role in such a way to bring about the battle of Kurukshetra. And therefore, Kurukshetra battle comes, and Arjuna comes, and then there's Bhagavad Gita, and so forth, and so on and on. That is plan of Krishna to give knowledge and enlighten people of this world. So Yudhishthir Maharaj was not in that category as far as I see. But he was a perfectly situated person, no doubt. But he did some adharma.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Dandot
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna.
Maharaj, with your permission, if I could add a few reflection on this particular question.
Sure.
So, Maharaj, it would also be what you explained very nicely, but there is also an element that here is Bali Mahārāja, who was from the family of Asuras, the Daityas, as the grandson of Prahlāda Mahārāja. And the Lord established that even if there is a good quality in a personality who belongs to the the so-called family of the Daityas, that also needs to be glorified. Therefore, placing Bali Mahārāja as one of the Mahajan, because ultimately he did not act on his asuram bhavam ashrita. He did not act on that bhav. Instead, he kept his promise, his dharma, but effectively what he was doing is establishing the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And notwithstanding that he belonged to a family of the Daityas. And therefore the Lord, not being partial, that I will only, put my devotees as Mahajans, he also placed Bali Mahārāja as one of the Mahajans.
Well, not just only Bali Mahārāja, but even Prahlāda, although Prahlāda
absolutely
was a devotee from birth because he heard the transcendental knowledge from Narada Muni.
That's right.
He was born of an asura.
Absolutely, Maharaj.
So, the Lord is not biased.
Absolutely, Maharaj. So the Lord is very fair. That further, proves that, because that's an often question asked, on the partiality of the Lord. The second reflection, Maharaj, was that we also see the highest level of pure devotion is a journey from akinchana gocharam to akinchana vittaya. That means when one is totally and materially exhausted, he can then become eligible to be the property of the Lord. And Bali Mahārāja, in one sense, also gave up everything, and he was totally exhausted of all the power with which he was ruling the three worlds. And here he was in front of the Lord Vamandev, where he became the property in the hands of Lord Vamandev, and akinchana vittaya. And therefore he was placed for that very sacrifice to be a Mahajan. What more glorification would one need in order one to be qualified and be eligible to become a Mahajan? Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yeah.
Thank
okay, there's one question in the chat.
Yes, and there is also one, Mataji. Divya
Okay, we'll get to that real quick. This is a quick answer. Saying Bhīṣma Pita is a Mahajan. When why did he not stop Duryodhana from gambling?
Yeah.
So you see, one thing is that Bhīṣma Pita had taken a vow that he will protect the throne of Hastinapur. And at the time when this incident took place, where Duryodhana was enticing Yudhishthira Maharaj with the Sakuni's crookedness to go in a gambling match, Dhritarashtra was sitting on the throne. And if Dhritarashtra, who is a sitting king, is having no objection, then Bhīṣma Pita cannot go against the throne of Hastinapur. And therefore, he was bound by his own vow to stay silent, although he wasn't approving it. He showed his disapproval, but he did, as I said, show his disapproval, but he cannot go against the throne of Hastinapur. And obviously, at that time, Dhritarashtra is on the throne. And if he ever told Dhritarashtra, no, you are doing wrong, do it my way, then he would interfere, and therefore he will break his vow, which he gave his promise to his mother Satyavati, that only on that basis that she will marry King Santanu. So, there's a whole intricate understanding of why things happen, and there's an honor where he had to protect his vow, because he is also a truthful person, and he could not just willy-nilly say, okay, I this is adharma, I'm going to take control. If that was the case, he would have just thrown out Dhritarashtra and everyone in the very first place, and set himself on the throne temporarily, and then put Yudhishthira back there. But it is you can say that now that we know on hindsight the whole story of Mahabharata, maybe it is the transcendental plan of the Lord to teach us by the example of the Mahabharata how we should not follow prey to all these kind of things. Okay, so one more question is there from...
yeah, we'll have the last question from Divya Gaurangi Mataji, yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much. Danvat Pranam, wonderful class. Thank you so much. Please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, I was just reading up different types of mukti yesterday, and in there, for Sarashti Mukti, Bali Maharaja example is given. Could you please elaborate a little bit more and explain? There it said that Sarashti Mukti means one who gets same opulence as the Lord, and Bali Maharaj is the example of that because he's given Sutal planet. So he's example of Sarashti Mukti.
Yeah, see, there's different types of liberations you can get, merging into the Lord, getting the same opulence as the Lord, or the highest, of course, is going into the Goloka planet where you are actually participating in informal interaction with the Lord. And Vaikuntha planets is like getting the same opulences as the Lord. So depends on different devotees, what their internal desires are. Krishna fulfills that at the time of liberation. Now, Bali Maharaj did not quite get liberation at that point because he was sent to Sutala for purpose of staying there for a certain time. And then when the next opportunity is there for the vacancy of Indra, he would then become Lord Indra. And after that, he will then go back to the spiritual world. And at that point, it depends on your original desire in the heart, what you want. And then Krishna will fulfill that and you'll go to that. So in our spirit of practicing Krishna consciousness by mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has come to teach us that highest liberation is to go to Goloka, in the spiritual world where you are with Krishna in Goloka rather than Vaikuntha planets. Although Vaikuntha planets are also eternal and also spiritual, but the lila is different, the rasa is different. And therefore, if you want to engage in the highest rasa, then this is what Mahaprabhu has given us. And even though while we are performing highest rasa, but we have some very in-depth desire to be in awe and reverence, then you can go to Vaikuntha planet. Just like pastimes of Morari Gupta, he was into Lord Ramachandra, even though in the presence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So then he got that kind of liberation to go and enjoy his pastimes with Lord Ramachandra in transcendental Ayodhya Loka in the spiritual world. That's the understanding.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. So what is popping in my mind is that, do we say then that Bali Maharaj is at a Sutal planet, but he will be again next time will be becoming Indra. So he's not really got Sarashti Mukti yet, but that might be his final destination if the example is given like that.
Yeah, you can say that that's the final destination, because even going into heavenly planet in the next birth, he'll be still in the material world, but he will be there not as an ordinary person, but as a pure devotee. In these heavenly planets, all the posts like Indra, Vayu, Varun, where all these are not just ordinary persons. They're all pure devotees of the Lord who have been qualified to give those positions and administer the Lord's universe. And when they finish their time, then they go back to the spiritual world and then enact on their Nitya Swarup, whichever their Swarup is.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much, Maharaj. That is really very good. You've cleared my doubts. Thank you so much. Dandavat Pranam, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. So, Subal Prabhu, you had raised your hand for a moment, then so I believe there is nothing more that you wish to ask, Prabhu?
No, Prabhuji. In fact, that question was already answered by Maharaj, so I lowered my hand. Thank you so much.
All right, wonderful. So, very, very enriching session today, but it was made even further more enriching by the nice questions that came through from Anupama Radharani Mataji, Divya Gaurangi Mataji, and Subal Prabhu. And we request all the devotees also to kindly do share your reflections and even questions, as they are indeed enriching for all of us. So, we come to an end of this session. We'll look forward to another one, Krishna willing, next Saturday at 7:30 p.m., same time as today. And, as we always do, let's have
My
a
time will be different next week.
Huh?
My time will be different next week.
Oh yeah, yours would be 5:30 then.
No, right now it's 3:30.
Right now it's 3:30, it'll be 4:30.
No. Right now at this moment in time is 5 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
My session normally begins at 3:30.
Right.
But next week it will be 4:30 because we are going 1 hour forward tonight.
Okay. All right.
Also, one more question.
Yes, Maharaj.
Are you uploading these sessions on your website?
Yes, Maharaj, on the YouTube.
Bali are saying that they can't get it.
Oh no, they are being uploaded. I'll check with Vrinda if there is any, if there's been any gap in uploading them, then she'll take care of that. So Divya Gaurangi Mataji writes that it's on YouTube, on the YouTube channel of ours.
Yeah, your YouTube channel, the Vedic Studies.
Yeah.
I also, and not all of them are there.
Okay, so I think that
some were actually unlisted for a while, but they have been made to go live now, like made public. Some were still unlisted for past 2 weeks or so. But now they're up.
I checked a couple of days ago when I got a message from one of my disciples in Bali saying we are not getting this link. So I thought, well, I will send a message to Rasikira Prabhu and sort it out with him.
I'll just check and I'll make sure it's up.
Okay, no problem. As long as it's there, then they can have access to it. Because right now for them, it is 2 o'clock in the morning and they cannot stay up 2 o'clock in the morning to be part of our live session.
Yeah, that's right. No, we'll take care of this, Maharaj. And also request all the devotees to, while, we may be coming to an end to the 12 Mahajan course, but as we announced last week that we are planning with Maharaj to continue the sessions and probably cover, like a Bhakti Shastri, but we're working out the details. So we'll continue, to request that you stay connected, stay tuned in, and we'll come with more so that we don't let go the association of His Holiness Atmanivedana Maharaj. Do you want to let go his association?
No.
All right. Oh my God, that was a very loud no. Okay. So that's wonderful, Maharaj. So
No, we don't.
the answer, we got Divya Gaurangi Mataji also writing no. And I'm sure that that has to be the case, or must be the case with all
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. You should not have any doubt about that. We are eager to hear every week from him.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Kuldevika Mataji. So Maharaj, so we will come to an end. And as always, as we do, why don't we have a little chit chat with Maharaj? So the rules of the game are, please switch on your video and let's do hello and hi with His Holiness Atmanivedana Swami Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
All right. So Anupama Radharani Mataji, right up there.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Dandavandana.
Now we have Tirtharaj